Okay, just a few things to clarify before getting into this. One, this is obviously in parts, so just make sure you have the playlist ready and open when you watch this afterwards. And two, if it weren't clear by the title, this is only the classic era Sonic, meaning it's everything that was from his conception up to R's release, with nothing else onward being talked about. Now, this era by itself just has so much weird and crazy and interesting stuff behind it that you could talk about it literally all day and still not cover everything, so obviously this Iceberg doesn't have everything itself either. If you really want to, you can say stuff that's missing in the comments, but it was just what I was initially thinking of and what would be the most fun to think about and such. So, yeah, anyway, with that, let's get started, because this layer is already going to be long enough in itself. So originally I was going to have this be just its own layer listing all of the obscure characters and games and such, but I thought it would just be best to make it all one entry as the first one on this, especially since said obscure characters and games are a lot less obscure now, to say the least. I mean, I guess they're still sort of Heavy and Bomb, but not really, and there was also Princess Tiara from the cancelled X-treme game, but again, not really that obscure anymore. As for games, I guess maybe like Sonic Labyrinth and all of the weird obscure spin-offs and racing titles and such, and PC and Pico games. So ever since YouTube was basically first made, maybe even beforehand, Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog has had plenty of famous memes and lines and just everything about it. I'm sure everybody here knows some, like the penis line, obviously, and a favorite of mine that's kind of underrated is, I just love sharing a cozy hot cup of Lepsing Shu Shang tea. So everybody knows that Michael Jackson was involved with Sonic 3's development. But despite that, it's still such a huge mess, and everything's up to debate and contradictory to itself and conflicting, and I'm just gonna say what I think is the case from what I've looked at. So, he was obviously hired to do the music, but then at some point he was dismissed. Now, the reasons given is also contradictory, and there's two different ones. One was that they dismissed him because the child abuse stuff was happening, and the second one is that he just left on his own because he wasn't satisfied with how his music sounded on the Genesis sound trip. Now, what music ended up being used is also up for debate, and yeah, I'm sure you can find a handful of ones that people seem to think that he made, but it also seems conflicting on whether or not they end up getting used in any final version of the game, and when Origins changed the soundtrack, if it turns out those are the ones that Sega made, or if it's actually the ones that he made all along, and yada yada. I'm sure you can find plenty of other videos that go over this more accurately, or supposedly more accurately, and you can also say what's up in the comments if you want, but anyway, it's a mess. Let's just move on. Sonic X-treme is one of the most famous cancelled video games ever. It's definitely the most well-known for Sonic himself, and it was meant to be his big Saturn jump to 3D debut, but unfortunately the development was such a mess that it just ended up getting cancelled, and this is seen as one of the main reasons why the Saturn failed so hard out in the West. And I recently looked up all of the story and plot ideas they had for this game, and it made me pretty sad that the game wasn't made, because one, I do like the way the game looks when it doesn't have the fish eye effect thing, and two, just go off the plot ideas they had and stuff, it sounds really fun and interesting, and yeah, it was fun to imagine the cutscenes play out in my head and stuff, and it's a shame. And something that could find its own entry later down in the Iceberg is that, like Mario 64, Sonic has realistic drowning animation in this, and it might even be more disturbing to look at since it's cute little cartoon Sonic. Fang/Knack. This is just referring to how he got his name changed from Knack to Fang, and we'll go over why later on in the series. But yeah, Knack, despite that, still ended up lasting quite a bit. I think he's had the name in the Archie comics, and a lot of European sources were still using it, especially Europe does it a lot, the series that we might touch on a bit later. And you sometimes still hear Knack to this day because of it. Tails Doll Curse. This is one of the oldest and most famous creepypastas. It existed before creepypasta was even really a term. It was at its peak in 2008. And I guess you could also call it a video game urban legend, and we'll be talking about its origins and stuff a little bit later on in the series. And Yeah, because of that, it made Tails a really popular character, despite being like a weird one-off one at first. And he's been making more appearances since, which I'm glad about because I just fucking love this little guy. He's so cute, and I especially love the IDW like shot of him where it's like true to form and he's cute, but there's still like that little tad of like creepiness in the background. I think that's perfect. Fun is Infinity. This is a really famous secret screen in Sonic CD. It's really famous because of how fucking horrifying it came off to kids out in the West. Mainly because of the music and the US soundtrack, which we'll talk about right after this. And yeah, a lot of people also thought that it was signed Majin, aka like the devil in the corner, but no, it's actually the dev's name. However, it's very closely spelled, and Majin was a nickname of him beforehand. And apparently all of the creepiness regarding this is unintentional, but that doesn't explain why he has the fucking face like that in the background in both versions. So, speaking of Sonic CD, when it came to the West, for whatever reason, they wanted to just completely change the soundtrack for it. The Japanese soundtrack for Sonic CD is what you expect for Sonic. It's very upbeat and yeah, go, 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 and yeah, you know. For America, however, they decided to edge it up a notch and be like, "Muahahaha, this game will kill you," and yeah, it's because of the boss music that Fun is Infinity was so fucking horrifying, and yeah, the Game Over music definitely got a big hit of that too. Honey. So I may have an entry for obscure characters in general, but Honey still gets her own for being a unique case. And she was originally meant to be a secret character in Sonic the Fighters, based on the character from Fighting Vipers of the same name. In fact, in a port of Fighting Vipers, you can see Honey in the intro briefly, along with other models from Sonic the Fighters. And she's in this difference palette, which ended up being used as her second one in Fighters, which is interesting because she's the only one that does that instead of having a monochrome one. Nobody outside of Sega knew about this character until after the Gems ports came out 10 years later, and people started dumping the files for that, and they found her, and they slowly started putting her together and stuff, and then by 2012, when the game was re-released again, they officially made her a finished character. Tails dies in 2 8-bits bad ending. Sonic 2 8-bit, that is. So this is dark, but it's so well known that it's just at the tip here, and all it is that if you fail to get off the Chaos Emeralds and get the bad ending as usual for Sonic, there will be a cutscene where Sonic's running around by himself, and then once the credits are done, he'll stop and he'll look up and he'll see like a vision or an apparition of Tails in the sky, implying that he fucking got killed by Eggman, which, yeah, is pretty fucked up for Sonic, especially since this is like the cute little classic designs. Barrel of Doom. This is the nickname given to the barrel in Carnival Night Zone that is really unintuitive of how to control it. All you have to do is just press up and down the D-pad, but it's not fucking obvious at all. That's what you're supposed to do, especially for kids playing, and because of that, it was like a fucking huge roadblock for a lot of people, and a lot of people just like kind of accidentally slipped by it, and it became really infamous for its poor design, where they even apologized for it. Johnny Fector has a good video outlining why exactly it's poor design, so I implore you to just watch that. Prototype leaks. This is very general, it just refers to all of the different leaks of Sonic that have been, all the different prototypes that have been leaked of Sonic games. Sonic X-treme had one that was leaked out. Unfortunately, there's not much to it. Sonic 1 recently had one leaked out a bit ago, which was pretty big news. And yeah, a lot of other ones got leaked too for other games that people don't really talk about as much, that have been out for a while, such as just all the spin-off ones. Shenmue figs. Last entry, no big deal, it's just thrown in here. Basically, in Shenmue, you can collect different figurines from gacha figure pawns, and yeah, there's different references to different Sega games, including Sonic, and you can get the characters as little figurines on there, and they use their fighters models, I'm pretty sure. And yeah, it's just a nice little cute thing. And that does it for the first tip. We'll dive into the more interesting waters after this. Thank you for watching.